Hey, my name is Deborah Winters. Welcome to my YouTube channel, a place where you will hear conversations with ordinary people telling their extraordinary stories. Hey guys, welcome back to my YouTube channel, Their Stories. We hope that you listened last week to part 1. So we're on part 2 today for Steve and Melody Barwick. Steve is telling Melody's story because she was incoherent and doesn't remember her story. So we've heard the first miracle. And so now we're going to pick up the story from the move to Tampa General. And we'll hear the second and third story. Thank you for being here, guys.
So by this time it was August the 28th.
So
it started July 15th.
July 15th, August the 28th.
So we're 6 weeks in.
Okay. And she's not any better?
Not any better, actually worse.
Okay.
And they started the CAT scans and the blood work and all the different tests. So finally they did a spinal tap.
Okay. Was she still having the drug flown in from Pennsylvania? Was she still taking
They
that
continued
expensive?
it. I think she only had a couple more treatments.
Okay.
In Tampa, and they did those few more treatments. And then they started in on their test. Well, they did a spinal tap. Normally you lay somebody on a table and on their stomach, and they had to put her to sleep to do the spinal tap. Because she wouldn't be still.
Settle down.
And that's a very tedious thing. So they had to put her to sleep in order to do the spinal tap. Well, when the results of the spinal tap came back, her white count was off the scale.
Okay.
And they said that normally means major cancer somewhere in the body. So they began to do all these cancer tests, CAT scans, MRI of her whole body from her head to her feet, and they could find nothing.
No cancer.
No cancer. So they put her on super strong antibiotics through an IV for about 4 or 5 days. And 2 weeks later, they did another spinal tap, and it was back to normal.
Okay.
They couldn't find anything. Her severe psychosis was still there. They would come in daily and ask her all kind of questions which she could not answer.
Wow.
They had her restrained 20 hours a day to a bed, hands and feet.
Now, were you retired at this point?
No.
So you're still trying to work?
I'm working every day and coming to the hospital from Fort Meade, which is about a 65-mile trip one way.
Okay.
And I'm leaving work and going to the hospital and then going back home.
Wow.
And every day. And I was pretty tired.
Yeah.
Pretty tired, but I never missed a day.
Plus, he would go see his mother.
And I was an adult Sunday school teacher. And on Sundays, I would still teach my class, go visit my mother
In Zephyr Hills,
and then drive back to Tampa and spend the rest of the evening there with Melody.
Wow.
And
you couldn't really talk to her because she wasn't communicating, right?
No.
Okay.
She knew me, but she didn't know anybody else. People would come and visit her, and her oldest daughter, Denise, she was my godsend and my helpmate through this whole. Now she lived in Tallahassee.
But she came every.
But I text her every day and called her multiple times a day and text her multiple times a day on her. And then every couple of weekends she'd come down and visit.
Right.
And
wow.
Well, they continued with all the tests, and finally it got to the point after 6 weeks.
At Tampa General.
At Tampa General.
So 6 weeks at Winter Haven Hospital, then 6 more weeks at Tampa General. Okay.
And then they finally said, Mr. Barwick, he said, you might as well put her in a nursing home. She's not going to get any better.
Wow.
And I said, I refuse to accept that.
Right.
And her daughter and I as well said, we refuse to accept that we will not put her in a nursing home. And they said, well, the problem is the insurance company won't pay anymore because physically we can find nothing wrong with her.
But they knew that she was not well.
Yes.
But they couldn't find out what. That's crazy.
Is that when you took me home?
So I told they said, put her in a nursing home, she's not going to get any better. I said, I refuse to accept that. I said, I'm going to take her home. He said, you're making a big mistake.
Really?
He said, do not take her home. She's on all this medication. I said, well, you'll just have to tell me what she's taking because I'm taking her home. I'm not putting her in a nursing home. And I took 5 weeks vacation for my job. and I took her home.
Wow.
Well, I found out pretty quick they were not telling me, they were not lying. They had her on so much prednisone. They had her on so much prednisone, she would march, even in place. And they had to keep her restrained.
Now, what was the prednisone doing?
Well, it's a steroid.
Right, but what were they attempting to achieve by giving her that drug?
Yeah, really.
Well, they were attempting to get her mind to come back.
Okay. So she would just march
to fight off
in
any kind of major something. Now they had a team from Johns Hopkins Hospital
really
working on this case because they'd never seen anything like it before, and they were all baffled. She had about 6 or 8 doctors, some from the University of South Florida, some from Tampa General, and some from Johns Hopkins Hospital.
And no one could figure it out.
And no one could figure it out. And finally, they just told me, you gotta.
They can't help you.
We can't help you, and the insurance is refusing to pay anymore because we can't physically find anything wrong with her. So I took her home anyway. They had her on so much prednisone and Ativan and psych drugs and stuff like that till she would just, I saw some bizarre, I saw how the brain can malfunction at its worst.
Wow.
And he won't tell me half of the crazy stuff I did.
I couldn't.
He said, I can't.
During that 6 weeks time, I was confined to the house.
Yeah. So was your daughter still coming some?
She came.
And your
she
sister
came over
was down the street.
After 2 weeks. Well, I carried her up to my brother's house in Tallahassee. What an experience.
After 2 weeks, just to have a break.
After, I thought maybe that might spark something in her that would cause her to remember
I love
something.
them.
Okay.
That's his brother and sister.
It was a disaster.
It was.
She took off running down the road.
She did.
I had to chase after her and get her.
I fell off the porch one time.
She fell off the porch.
No, 2 times.
She would march around the house like a soldier and tap me on the head. I was exhausted at this point because I was only getting about three hours a night.
So she wasn't sleeping at night.
And the prednisone.
24/7 you were awake.
They say usually prednisone, the dosage is 20 milligrams a day, and I was on 100 a day.
Oh, wow.
So,
okay.
And they had her restrained to the bed. But after I brought her home, I had to keep the door. I had to watch her.
You had to lock the doors, right?
I had to watch her like a hawk because she'd run outside with no clothes on.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
I mean, it was
Crazy.
bizarre. And I was exhausted, mentally, physically exhausted.
So you went to your brother's for how long?
Just a weekend. And her son-in-law had to come in and help me get her up there and take her back to my house.
Because she was in a car.
Yeah.
And she could easily just open the car door.
Well, I had to watch her like a hawk. That's what I'm saying. I had to watch her because she'd open the door to a 70-mile-an-hour trying to jump out. So
You brought her
I
back?
was confined to quarters, and somebody had to come. I couldn't even go get a loaf of bread or a carton of milk.
Got it.
And so somebody would have to come and stay with her. So her sister would come and stay with her long enough for me to go and buy groceries and stock up and everything.
So how long did that go on?
That went on for five weeks.
Because you had to go back to work.
I had to go back to work after 5 weeks. Well, at that point, I had to hire CNA nurses
Yes.
to take care of her during the day while I was at work. And it just happened to be a friend of mine that had a business, and she gave me a cut rate. Still cost me $2,000 a month.
Oh my gosh.
To have CNA nurses, and she about killed them.
Really?
She got away from them one time and run across the road into the neighbor's yard and was swinging in his swing, and they had to call the police and come get her.
We can laugh now, but this is terrible.
Kept getting worse, and she would march around the house. I was so exhausted one day I fell asleep in the chair, and when I woke up, she had taken everything out of the refrigerator and set it on the counter.
Oh wow. Okay. So
bizarre stories, and so finally the CNA nurses, it got so bad she locked them out of the house one time, and I had to come home from work and let them back in.
Oh, God.
And I mean, you had to watch her constantly, and then neither one of us was getting any sleep. So an evangelist friend of mine came by,
Just to visit?
Just to visit, and he, I had called him and told him, and he traveled all over the country preaching. And he came to the house and was going to pray for her, and he prayed for her, and he says, the Holy Spirit told him, he said, I know it don't feel okay, I know it don't look okay, but he said everything's going to be fine.
He did. Everything's going to be fine.
Everything's going to be fine. He said, I know it
Did
don't
you
look
say,
like it. I
how
know it
much
don't feel like
longer
it.
do I have to
really?
do
He
this?
said, I can look at you and tell you're at the end of your rope. And I mean, it was the biggest test of my faith.
Right.
At that point, I had to get somebody to teach me Sunday school class. And I couldn't go see my mother for those weeks because I couldn't get anybody to stay with her long enough to do that. Finally, it got to the point where this was around Thanksgiving when my friend came and prayed and prophesied. Well, I had to go back to work the week after that, so I took her back to Tampa General Hospital because she had gotten no better and she was continually getting worse.
So the CNAs were no longer coming to the home?
They said they couldn't do it no more. They said we just can't handle her.
Wow.
So I took her back. They put her back in the psych ward, and she had a psychiatrist from a young lady from University of South Florida. And of course they started over on all the tests.
I'm surprised
again.
they took her back since you wouldn't.
Yeah, me too.
But they did. And
Now, did the insurance
this time they tested her for Nile fever. They tested her for Lyme disease. They tested her for mad cow disease.
Wow.
And when they did that, they had to put her in quarantine. And we had to wear masks and gloves and gowns and every time we went in to see her. Well, they still had her strapped down to the bed 20 hours a day. And when I would get there, I'd let her up. And I had to sign a release form because they pitched a fit saying, if she
You were going to be
hurt herself,
responsible.
you're going to be responsible.
Right.
So when I came, I would let her up and walk around and make sure she didn't fall or whatever.
And she was still acting the same. Nothing had changed.
Nothing. They come in. Now, I had brought her some Christian CDs in a DVD player or a CD player. And they began to let her listen to Christian music.
Okay.
Doctor came in one day and he asked her, who's president, what day is it, where are you at? She couldn't answer any of them. Now this is 4 months into it, almost 5 months into it, still no better. And I said, Doc, I want you to see something. Right after he asked her those questions, I put on that CD, her spirit man was still alive. She sang those songs in perfect key and never missed a word. And he stood there with his mouth dropped open. He said, I've been doing this 40 years, and he said, I've never seen anything like this in my career.
Wow.
Had I had any seizure?
Oh yeah, I forgot about that. Yeah. While I had her at home, her daughter had come down for the weekend, and we were sitting watching TV, and I was supposed to go to a class reunion. I was president of the class, and her daughter wanted me to go, and I said, no, I just don't feel like I need to go. I feel like I need to stay here. So we were sitting there watching TV, and all of a sudden she went into convulsion. And her eye rolled back in her head, and her lips turned blue. Never seen anything like it. It looked like the devil.
Wow.
And we called 911. They come pick her up and take her to the hospital. They took her to Lakeland Regional this time. And they kept her 4 days and ran every kind of test on the man. Nothing. So they sent her back home, and then, then I put her back in.
At Tampa General.
Well,
when did they start the ECT?
Finally, they said there's a procedure called electroconvulsive therapy.
It's like shock treatment.
It's a shock treatment.
Okay, I remember that.
And they said we want to try it as a last resort to see because they say it's like resetting a computer.
Oh, okay.
Rebooting a computer. He said it'll reboot her brain.
Wow.
And so I agreed to it, and they wired her brain up with electrodes, and they took her in and put her to sleep and turned the juice to her and she would convulse for a minute and a half. Then they would turn it off.
And that was part of the process.
That was part of the process. That was the procedure. And they did it 3 or 4 times in the first week. After the third one, she came back.
Weird, isn't it?
You mean like after the third one in one setting?
After the third treatment, her mind came back.
Wow.
Did they do the treatments every day?
Yes.
They did it every day?
So
They
the
did it
third
every
day.
They did 13 altogether. Even they did 7 or 8 after she had already come home for good. Well, by this time it was almost Christmas.
July to Christmas.
July
so
to Christmas.
She came back on the third day. Oh, isn't there a
Wow.
scripture about that?
Yes, there is.
She came back on the third session.
That's pretty cool, isn't it?
And she had some memory loss.
Okay.
Now this lady had worked at DOT for 30 years. She was a boss lady. She had 8 people under her at work. And they brought her back.
Well, they said I could start coming back a half a day.
Well, wait a second. So hang on. So
Yeah.
we're at Tampa General.
Right.
3 days she comes back, and so what happens
They continued the treatments
for how many days?
they did 13
10 more.
treatments total.
Okay.
They did 10 more after that.
And she just stayed at Tampa General.
She
that
stayed at
whole
Tampa
time.
General till Christmas, and they started weaning her off of the prednisone,
Okay.
and
I was
weaning
home
her off of
Christmas,
some
right?
Christmas Eve, the day before Christmas Eve, they let her come home. And then she went back for the additional treatments for a month, and then they let her start going back half day
To work.
to work.
Oh, because
She never lost.
She never retired. She
never-
hadn't retired,
Right.
so she'd been out of work.
She never lost her technical abilities. They all came back. She knew exactly what she was doing and everything. But the third miracle was, after 6 weeks, FMLA stopped,
Yes.
and she don't get paid anymore.
Right.
She never missed one paycheck because people in that big central office there donated all their sick time.
Yeah.
Wow.
I was in the sick leave pool and they gave me their
She
sick
never
leave.
missed one
That's
check.
amazing.
in 6 months, and I paid tithes on all of it.
And so, like day 3, you come out of that, and did you ask it? You had questions. What am I doing? What's going on?
Oh no.
Yeah,
I kind of remember parts of
I mean she came back, but they continued the treatments, and each time she'd get a little better, a little better.
I
a little
remember
better.
one time being in the room
In Tampa General.
in Tampa General, and it looked like an operating room. They had lights everywhere, and they were telling me everything that they were doing. But I only remember that one time they were hooking my brain up, and I was like, I remember that part, and I was like, wow. But I don't remember when they shocked me or any of that
Right.
kind of stuff.
Well, they put her to sleep and do all that.
Yeah.
But gradually, everything came back, and my friend was right.
Yeah.
Everything's going to be okay. I mean, it was a miracle from God.
Yes.
The whole thing was a miracle, and it's a miracle I had the sanity to. I never
Yes.
missed not one day
Of work.
of work or of visiting her in the hospital.
He was a saint.
No, I wasn't a saint. There were days I was I'd like to put you out of your misery, or have them come get you and take you to a nursing home. But I knew I
So
couldn't
that
do
was 6 months.
6 months.
Yeah.
Crazy.
It's the biggest.
My boss was so
Test of
shocked
faith
when I
that
came back
we'd
to
ever
work
been
because he
through.
said, I honestly didn't think you would ever be able to come back to work.
She worked 5 more years.
Wow.
Yeah. I was on drop. Well, I went on drop when I got back. I could have gone on drop before I got sick, but I didn't know it. They didn't tell me. So when I got back, they told me, they said, you can go on drop now, which means
Yeah, explain drop.
drop is like you still get your paycheck when you're working and you still get a paycheck, but you're actually retired after 30 years.
You have a projected retirement
Right,
date.
and that goes into like a savings account, and I don't know how much percentage it was, but it was a lump sum. When I retired,
Okay.
they gave me like a lump sum check just for drop. It was like 120,000 or something like that.
Okay.
Is just like one check for drop. But I was working and still getting paid, but my retirement was going into.
So when you
savings.
came out of this, whatever,
She don't
Right.
remember anything.
you don't remember. So were you physically, you had to be exhausted.
He
But you
said
had
I
not
lost-
slept for.
She lost 40
He
pounds.
said I lost 40
Wow.
pounds, and
They said she had some heart damage, but from all the psych drugs that they had given her and all the prednisone they had given
but
her.
I went for a, what do you call it?
A cardiogram.
And it was perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I didn't have any.
Wow.
But she had a whole team of doctors from John Hopkins. And
Oh, another
University of
thing
South Florida.
that they told me when I went back for my checkup after I got dismissed, I had to go back for just a checkup.
Well, you had to get cleared for work.
Cleared for
by a
work, that's right.
psychiatrist.
Okay.
He wondered what the heck she was doing.
He
there.
said, "What are you doing here?" And I was like, "Well, y'all told me to come back." And he's like, "You're doing good." And but they told me, they said we're gonna need to see you once a year, and maybe you might have to have a shock treatment once a year
Oh my
till the
God.
rest of
I'll
your
do
life.
that.
But I've never had any more. Never had.
They
to.
never pushed for that then. So did they wean you off the drugs?
Yes.
Or did you take yourself off?
Yeah, they weaned her off of them.
Okay.
They told us the plane.
Also, my sugar went real high.
During this time, she became a severe diabetic.
Yeah, 3 shots a day.
And that's still with her.
Yeah,
Oh wow.
I don't take any shots.
But the devil
He's a liar.
tried to destroy our dream
Yeah.
by stopping the sale of the house, by buying a new house, everything. I mean, he tried to
Wow.
stop it all, and destroy our life, but he was not successful. God prevailed. A 3-way miracle.
And he sent your friend to pray for her
Yes,
and give you some hope, right?
yes.
And actually, there was a lot of
A lot of prayer,
Well,
I'm
he had
sure,
people
right?
praying all over the country.
Yeah.
a lot of churches were praying. Yeah,
That
a
is
lot of people were praying.
amazing.
yeah.
But one thing, her spirit man was alive
Yeah.
when she was during this process. A black lady, church going woman, I could tell, Pentecostal lady, because she said your wife was speaking in tongues last night. And this
Oh,
is
so
while
she's a
she was
nurse?
still out.
Is this a
why-
nurse?
Yeah, a nurse
Okay.
told me this. I said, yes, she's Pentecostal, and
Oh,
and then
wow.
another nurse the next night said, your wife was speaking in a language I didn't understand. But
Oh,
I said, okay.
that's her prayer language. That's how she
Yes.
prays.
Thank God I didn't lose
But
that.
her spirit man
You know,
was still
But
alive.
still alive.
Deep down in all that.
Yeah.
Yes, that's what kept me alive. Basically,
Yeah.
is the spirit man. You know, it was
The
amazing.
goodness of
That's-
God.
I know what.
And that's been 12 years.
11.
Saturday will be 11 years.
11 years.
Saturday, yeah.
Wow.
I told Steve, I said, it's a good thing it happened to me instead of you because I'd have just put you in a nursing home.
Oh, that's perfect. She doesn't mean that.
I don't
She's
mean
just
that.
teasing.
I don't know if I'd had as much faith as he did, though.
How long have you guys been married?
25 years.
25. Oh, wow.
He
25
just
years.
took me to Switzerland.
That's right. They got back from. What a wonderful
Oh,
trip.
it was one.
But
it was
I can
nice.
testify that she is fully recovered and she's
Still
she's
crazy.
a clear mind. Well, we all have a little bit of crazy, don't we? Is there anything else you want to say before we sign
I
off?
don't think so. That pretty much. But
Just
she retained all of her
don't-
technical abilities.
Don't lose hope, right?
Don't lose hope.
Right.
He's still
Don't
God.
lose hope when,
He's still
when,
God.
when it looks bleak, when it
Yeah.
looks like
Yeah.
you're asking God, where are you? He's right there with you the whole time.
The whole time.
And he saw
And
us
it may
through.
not seem like it.
Right.
And
there
you're
were-
exhausted.
I'll be honest with you. There were times where my faith was weak,
Yeah.
and I needed encouragement.
Had to
I
be.
needed somebody to love me, and I needed somebody to encourage me and tell me it's going to be okay. And
Your company was good to you, too.
my company allowed me to work at different locations to
Okay.
be able to stay close to home,
Whew.
especially when
And you both retired
Both
We
retired.
and enjoying retirement, right?
I retired exactly 5 years that was 2012. I retired in 2017. That was 5 years.
Yeah, 5 years.
Because there was a 5-year drop. I was on the drop. And then Steve retired in 2019.
19.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, life is good.
Oh, and that's a great story.
I know, isn't that cool?
And the doctors couldn't figure
They
it out.
they call her every time they'd see her. They said, "There's my miracle."
Yeah,
right there."
yeah. They would say
It was
there's
a miracle because they knew it was a miracle.
Wow.
yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you guys for listening. And I didn't say earlier, but do like and share this wonderful story just of the goodness of God. He's so faithful.
Yes, he is.
If you don't know Jesus, there's no time like the present. So simple prayer would just be to, Jesus, I'm a sinner and please forgive me of my sins. And he's quick. He's right there waiting for you to repent and turn around from the bad that you're doing and pursue him. So he's good all the time, right?
All the time.
Bless you guys.
Thank you.
Awesome story.
Thank
Awesome
you.
story. You guys have a good day. We'll see you next time.